work at all. And let me just take a moment here also to put my video on the screen. That way we can have some contact here. Let me see here. All right. All right, there we go. So in that process, I wrote the code of the matrix. It took me about a month and a half. It's highly illustrated, as you know, and the premise of the code of the matrix is that there's actually a code within the language. And this code not only explains to us where we come from and where we came from, because language can't just be changed overnight, it actually hints to quite a few things. It's not only a story about our history, it's also a lesson about our power and an awareness of the power within each letter and the archetypical nature of the language since we speak in it, and just understanding English and all of what comes with English. So I won't elaborate on that now because I've got plenty of shows about that, but that's where it started, was just unraveling this code that I felt could be the key to replacing something that may be running backwards and may be misunderstood in your mind to something that is actually harmonizing your way of thinking and harmonizing the way of how you communicate with others. And from there, we began the resistance. And that kind of happened on somewhat of a humbug and happenstance. And it was just because after writing the book, I kind of looked to the whole thing and I was like, all right, so how is this going to happen? Am I just going to poof and disappear, or what's going to go on? And I was asked if I had done my best by my higher self in relation to getting this knowledge to everyone, despite publishing this book on Scribed. And I could admit, since I had a background in technology, that there was probably some more stuff that I could do, like start a website and things like that. And so by the third day, since the book had went viral, I think we had about 500,000 views on the Code of the Matrix, since it, of course, it was free. It was on Scribed. And so at that point, I started getting emails because I left my email address in the back of the book for anybody who, wanted to make a statement about anything. And I started getting an overwhelming amount of emails from everyone saying that not only did they have these same notions, but this was also adding some additional stuff to what they were aware of. And it was clicking. And I love that interaction just with people who also, instead of, because my previous 2 years or 3 years was just encountering people after my wake up that were like, just getting all this information and not knowing what to do with it and not even feeling like they wanted to believe in it, and maybe feeling like it may be a little bit malevolent in their world just because I wasn't subscribing to any deities. And I was explaining that the person is a central character and all of this, and we need to restore that. So I was continuously having this experience with people that didn't want that. And so once I started receiving emails from people who wanted to know more, I felt that as a very good and positive way of going into what I did next, which was to start the website, thewords.ning.com, which rapidly became the resistance within 3 months. And our whole goal there was emancipation for everybody. Well, I don't even want to use that term emancipation. It has different connotations, but basically total awareness for everyone that had the will to get that awareness, and uncovering all stones and not being afraid to say anything about organized traditions and dogmas and gods and anything that could be imperative to us functioning properly. If we felt that something was going on wrong with it, then we would just call bullshit. And so some people say that an anagram for the resistance was the heretic's nest. And so in every bit, it was just us as revolutionaries there and doing what we do with collecting the information and beginning to make heads or tails of what is going on in this reality. So fast forwarding here, because I can't go through all of this, but we began a lot of publications. We started to create shows. I started getting my feet wet with Blog Talk Radio. We went through the whole 2012 phenomena, even though I proficiently told everyone that the lineup could happen at any time and that it actually wasn't going to be anything that really visually happened on the 2012 lineup, but that we should actually line up ourselves and start realizing the connection that we have with the cosmos. So in developing those shows, such as AstroQuest, my daughter was also born during that time, and I also got married. And all that, I became a father, not just for the community, but also in real life, which is also very important because I was getting the real life experience of realizing that you're no longer the central person either in all of this, and that you should be looking out for others and that in which is to come. And so there became more of a grounded aspect of things instead of trying to run off with some alien somewhere into another planetary system to save something over there, or anything beside escaping. I decided that I wanted to actually be here, and I wanted to work on this process of guiding humanity into their next stage. And that is exactly how I feel to this very day. I have lost no energy in that cause. In fact, I actually have gained quite a bit of momentum in this process. So it means to me that I made the right choice. And as I continued, we went into AstroQuest, which was amazing. It was more of an interactive enlightenment. It started putting more fun into things. We started in attracting many more younger people actually into this rather than old people just looking to get wisdom. We start bringing in a lot of young people that were ready to change their lives early, not making age as a prerequisite. And then Secret Energy was born at a stage where we had completely outgrown the platform that we were developing in, which was actually a Ning network. And there were so many things that people were requesting and that we wanted to really see. And I couldn't get my hands into this code to actually begin to change what they had developed as static on this site. So I started the idea of launching a site that I actually thought was going to be done in 3 months. It actually took a year to get Secret Energy off the ground, and it became what I know as the world's first conscious social network. And that became the lesson, because obviously running networks or doing anything in life, you have to go through the learning curve. And so it became this process of not only developing a technology for conscious people, but also interacting on a metaphysical level and understanding how to remain at least at the same level of the technical giants that we see in the world today, such as the Facebooks and the Instagrams and those kind of platforms. I always had an emphasis that we shouldn't, just because we're supposedly conscious or any kind of stereotype, cheese on what we're presenting as far as exactly how much we're using from the technological space and from the other disciplines, as far as making and bringing all that and making it serve humanity. And also somewhere in there, we began a store. It first started as me just recommending things to people that they should also do, like internal cleansing and Ethereum gold. And after a while, it became so difficult to keep recommending all these different sites. I reached out to many of the people that we were getting products from, and we set up an affiliation with them. And so we started presenting those products, and that was the birth of the Secret Energy store also. Then the university launched. The university was our first attempt at creating a curriculum to actually, there were those who loved the sci-fi and, the way that we would just dive into something, but many would say at times or comment that things were a bit all over the place and they would love to have a place to start if that was possible. And in meditating on that, I decided that it would be great if we had some courses, some things that we can say, this is what we believe in, this is the core of what we know, and here it is. And that became the University. And the University is now at season 2, and ambassador training is in sovereignty mentorship are assets of the University, and us in this advent of teaching this metaphysical knowledge and also instructing others on how to do so. And I can just remember my brother Eddie actually saying one statement that really clicked to me at one point. And he said that, it feels like after you finish the university, the only thing you can do is be a spirit tech. And that hit it right on the button, because what we did was we also developed years ago this other arm of the faction called Spirit Tech, where we would start to explore employment for conscious people, or what we call karma-free wealth, a way in which we can earn current without compromising our moralities and earning a bunch of karma for whatever it is that we're engaged in. And that was a tough effort, because I actually put myself into, instead of figuring everything out spiritually, trying to figure out things in the fake matrix and just how the financial system works. And if there was something that we can do to actually get us at the state of being able to, at one point, become sovereign, make enough money to sustain ourselves, but again, do that in a way where it actually serves our path. And so we put years in that. In fact, Spirit Tech is, as it states here, approximately, that's 2015. So we're talking about 4 or 5 years old now. And in that, I met great people. There's about 1,500 Spirit Techs now. There's about 200 ambassadors. So it started working, and I started coming up with brilliant ways from taking feedback from everybody that was involved on how to create a system. Now a system that actually is conscious and actually is capable of employing everyone. But also we realized in that we needed to make some more changes. We needed to actually create some more things. So while that was in play and we were debugging it, we were still seeing all of the stuff going on in social media and in marketing and how trends were moving and all of that. And it kind of got us to the point that we are today. Not kind of, but it did get us to the point that we are today with how much we're aware of exactly what goes on behind the scenes with any successful faction or media endeavor. So, and also anything that is involving affiliations and actually how to get people to represent a product without compromising themselves, which was our goal. We didn't just want people to be sending links and selling products to people because that is what we call intrusive. We wanted to develop a way where you could actually share this consciousness and even share products, etc. But it would be a person's logical process and spiritual process that allowed them to decide if this is something that they wanted to buy. And then, of course, the spirit tech would get compensation for that. So that worked out very well, and it just needed us to build more infrastructure around it. And so I'll speed through this because we started to develop more things that were going to get us to the point that we are today. We started our first app, and we put it into the Apple Store and the Android Store. We actually just took it down. It stopped at 227 5-star reviews. And it was just really an app that was a repurposing of what the site contained, but people liked to use that, and it was the day of the app. Now we've kind of moved on to a completely responsive system, and but it was us still saying that, hey, just because we're a conscious faction doesn't mean we can't develop at the level of what everything else is doing. Also in that process, there was an idea to begin to create flagship products. Fiaco was the first flagship idea, and this means that we wanted to create something that would become the financial driving force for the spirit techs in the affiliation. And we're in that process still now, but it did actually allow me to go through the necessary ups and downs of manufacturing and invention and understanding what to do and what not to do in relation to bringing out something that is yours, something that you've designed and you've brought it to the forefront. And of course, along with all of these processes that I was going through and the mistakes that I was making, I was informing and the successes. I was informing everyone of these successes and these mistakes. And so this became more or less a training ground. And someone's saying that they can't hear anything, but maybe that's just on one side. Let's see here. All right. So it became more or less a training ground for others to get involved in what we start calling conscious entrepreneurship. And in that process, we developed ambassador training, which as you see here. And ambassador training was a slightly different approach at how we have been going at things so far. So before, everything was spiritual, and metaphysical. And that was great. But I was also noticing that there were many people who couldn't enjoy in the spiritual and the metaphysical greatness because they were still experiencing problems with paying rent, problems with dealing with their jobs. So I said, man, we got to put more time into actually getting people stabilized in the fake matrix, if you may. And I call it the fake matrix, by the way, because the word matrix means a womb. So in context, we are actually in the matrix. The matrix doesn't mean a city like New York. A fake matrix is something that is designed the same way that the real matrix is designed in order to entice people to come and be a part of it, like an artificial womb, if you may. And but it bears some resemblances to a real womb. So I always like to clarify the difference between a fake and a real matrix. So we started looking at the fake matrix and saying, you know, what can we do about the fake matrix and how can we get people into another stage? And right around that time, cryptocurrency started trending. I think everybody remembers that. And that was around 2017. And I caught a whiff of this idea. It really wasn't just about making money and maybe investing $1 and making $1 million back. It was about this idea of actually becoming a bank. And it was something that had visited me in my 20s with a friend that was pretty influential. And he said, hey, man, you can buy a bank for close to 300 grand. And I thought that, he was playing around and kind of joking about it. And I never took him serious. And since then, he's now become a multimillionaire. But the reality is that you can actually become a bank. There is licensing to become a bank. But in this aspect, it was like, well, if we're all depending on this system that is run by these specific people, which we've already identified as not being so forthcoming with how they want our progress to go in the positive and the harmonic direction, then we should probably have our own form of current at some point. And we even began the idea of actually creating our own cryptocurrency, which was Mindful Chain. However, there was so much going on in the legal sector in relation to cryptocurrency, we decided to desist on that. and actually go with something that was far more safe. And that was our invention of ohms and gamification, and actually awarding people for mindful actions inside the platform with points that they could later redeem for um, products and things that are actually on the site. And this created a very fine blend. It's actually a blend that we're working with now, and we're going to be scaling up here. And it's just because when you think of the legalities, you can't actually say that you're a security. You can't actually say that you have your own money and you're giving people your own version of money. That's still somewhat illegal, especially in the US structure. However, in affiliation, you can still pay a person for selling a product. So there we have a cash transaction. And then with our points, or a cash reward, and with our points, we also have more rewards that can actually be used for things that actually equate to cash. So it creates a perfect balance because it allows us to find a loophole between two worlds. So in one aspect, we can actually award our members financial currency, cash, for financial events that take place on the site, i.e. affiliation. And then on another end, we can also reward them for also sharing, rating, reviewing, and all the actionable points that we've created to actually give people ohms in the site. And then we also have another storage protocol called Joules, where you can actually transfer your ohms into Joules and actually store your Joules. And each Joule is about the equivalent of $1. So we found a very unique way to actually create something that gives us the ability to reward and gives us the ability to actually begin to funnel and transfer, allow the current that is going through this platform into everyone's hands evenly, as long as they're putting in those efforts. So that was big. One of the other big things that happened is I actually took a trip to Envision Festival. It was like my first festival like that, and it's here in Costa Rica. And because I find myself mostly working on all the things related to tribe, I generally don't get out. I don't travel much in that relation. And plus, I'm in paradise. So what am I going to do? Go look at another paradise. So the reality is that I have been quite stationed. But since this event was coming in town every year, I decided that was 2018 to actually jump into an Envision event and to see what was going on there. And I was completely mind blown for a while, and just the diversity of how many people, because especially the first year of Envision, it was definitely steered around getting to the person who loves the metaphysics, loves the consciousness, loves the spirituality, and is choosing wellness and mindfulness as a part of their life. So that first year, or second year, actually it was, the first and second years were so much full of that. I was able to get a bigger picture of just how in demand this service, if you may, was getting people to a higher state of consciousness, but just how little there was really out there. So I came in rejuvenated and ready to actually really create something new. And that's very difficult in this field because you can spend years and years even working on things like secret energy. I think we just this year early got finally secret energy to a stage where it's ultimately stable. And then now it's time to actually move on to something new. And so that's kind of how this works, is that you always have to challenge yourself to say, okay, well, that one's great. But just like a sand mandala, now we need to mess this thing up and actually go again. And so I made the decision to actually reconstruct a new platform based on the needs of what I had been immersed in for the last decade. And now what you're going to see today is the emergence of that. So breezing through this, we started so much. We started connecting with others. We started our key makers, 7 Raw going on Instagram. Obviously, ohms are in full effect. And now we have here, and this timeline actually ends in 2018. So you can see it hasn't been updated in about a year. And we've done so much since then. But I just like this last screen right here. Where are we going? Where does secret energy go from here? And that is actually not a question, because for me, it's always been real time. So I know where things are going next. But for others, they could be asking, so what could be possibly next for us, since we've accomplished so much, but we still see that there's an impact that we need to make. And so now I'm actually going to start going by my guidelines here, or my notes, so that way I can make sure that I cover what would be otherwise a rather large body of information. So the first thing is, or I guess we're past the first thing here, but so where are we going now? So Secret Energy 4.0 powered by Mindful app. So let's understand those terms first of all. When we say powered by Mindful app, it's because I started noticing that delegation was a skill. It was a technique. It was something that few possessed, and it was in itself a superpower. Delegation, especially in the conscious community, and it's because, there's so much trust that has to be placed on another when they're dealing with someone else's soul. you can oftentimes have a problem relinquishing that trust. And because of that, you would then have an enormous amount of things to do, even stuff to do until you die. And you would probably reach a certain level of burnout and frustration just because you were trying to get it all done and you felt like you were alone in the cause, at least to the degree in which you are engaged in that cause. And I see many people still dealing with this now. We talked about this even the day before yesterday, and we called it the after effect, or what do you call that? The side effect of consciousness. And so just give me one quick moment here. Okay, somebody said my sound is a bit low, so let me just turn up my sound. All right, so hopefully that boosts the sound up a little bit. Okay, so somebody said it's been loud and clear for them. Some say it's low, so I've turned it up a little bit. And by also, because we get in here a lot, this tribe, and we have ambassador training and sovereignty mentorship running now, so we're kind of used to coming in here and being very personal with each other. We don't melt down because some of YouTube stuff is not working, because it kind of never works sometimes. And this technology in itself is sometimey. They can push an update overnight and then all of a sudden nothing works. And so because of that, we don't put that responsibility on ourselves because it's not something that we can control. But what we do is we try to make sure that we can bring the best message possible and continuously broadcast the message. So I've turned it up a little bit so everybody should be able to hear it a bit more clearer. So Powered by a Mindful app, and what it means is it means that we've now developed something that's scalable. Because as I was saying about delegation, if you can't delegate, you could never involve 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, a million people to do anything as one human being. You would just be overwhelmed. And so it could be a sad day for you when you finally realize that, but it's the truth. And anybody that's ever dealt with anything that's on a massive scale or larger scales knows this. But oftentimes we don't want to give up on our dream either. So we will diligently continue the process of trying to grow and create something despite what we're facing. And I've kind of done that for 10 years, in some tenses, very in a grueling way, continue to triumph this idea of world enlightenment. Now I have quite a few more people around me that are willing to assist and vibe with this this connection that we're all sharing, and this projection and this vision that we're co-creating. And also, we begin to create tools and spaces where we can also connect with each other, so it makes it fun. And so we're along for the ride together. But that was with me making a decision that I need to stop everything and figure out how to delegate. And I'll just lend some advice here. Start with the small stuff, because each little small thing that you keep saying, I can handle that, those start to add up. And it's always the small things that you would relinquish a little bit more control over, because they have a tendency to be not as important. And then it starts this process of you going at other things that you can start to chop down and delegate to other people. And then before you know, you're a delegator and you have that superpower. So it was a process for me in getting to the point of realizing the importance of delegation. And that actually comes in with scalability. And scalability is that for us, it's big. We're big on integrity. And what that means is that it's not a desire for us to have millions of members if we cannot serve at the same capacity that we're serving now, if not at a greater capacity, serving self and serving others. There's no desire to just have a bunch of people inside of something for a long time. And that is actually the desire of most social media platforms. So because our directives are a bit different, this could mean we could be a lot more slower at the gun, if you may, just in making final decisions and bringing everyone into anything, and also claiming at times. And let me turn my sound off here because I keep getting bugged by it. Claiming. All right. Lots of distractions going on today. All right. So what I'm saying is that this process, it goes on spiritually, but because we have a platform, it also goes on technically. And when we say we want to grow and we want to help more people, that also means that we have to create things that can help more people. And it doesn't just mean more people coming into the site and listening to Seven's old videos. It actually means more people engaging. It means us finding common ground. it means a lot. And so we put our energy and our essence into this. And but there's a mindfulness here, and that's what I'm getting at here. There's a mindfulness of, well, is this going to work for a million people? That's what I'm working to get across here. Because you'll see someone present an idea about something. I think we should all do this. But how we're going to do that for millions of people, they would be oblivious of. So we had gotten all the way to the point where we had to figure out, how can we do this for hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people? How can we scale it? And that's already what began that process of us saying, well, we can't scale inside of Secret Energy as it is now because of the capacity and all these different things that I found out later about how to build sites and what causes a lot of problems. Plus, there were things going on in the site that we didn't necessarily see as purposeful. Even in our chats, we would often notice that we had to do more moderation than actually how much knowledge was really being shared. So all this we took into mind over the years. And I don't want to rush over this because this is something that people can look over later on in their own time. I'm not here for entertainment and theatrics. I'm actually just here also for the people who have supported this vision, so they can also say and understand within themselves why this actually is going to work and is working. So my goal here as a person that has been entrusted, especially with finances and also the technical arm of what is being developed, is to explain how all of that fuses together into something that becomes very tangible and is a reality for us, not just something that becomes another Kickstarter project that you never get in the mail. So there's a big difference here. And in fact, I'm big on also not even saying I can do something unless I can actually pull it off and actually do it. And that's what's been taking some time for some of the things that we've started engaging in to actually launch, is because I'll say it's done now, but there's this problem, and I'm very familiar with certain problems, this problem that still hasn't been addressed. So instead of launching with that problem still going on that we're aware of, let's fix that first and then launch. And so we had to go at a lot of stuff that I felt was the core of what would be the problems if we started engaging with hundreds of thousands of people, especially with the subject matter of metaphysics, because as you know, it's vast and you can get confused and overwhelmed and burned out and lied to and all of the different stuff that comes with that. And so we wanted to make sure that that didn't somehow taint our overall reputation that we've been working so hard to gain with the people. And so we're talking about an actual endeavor. We're talking about an actual mission. And so that's what Mindful App is Mindful App is full scope. I'm going to give you some breakdowns of what it can do and how it can even be plugged into other services, meaning that Mindful App is not even just a site within itself. It's actually a technology that is what you would say is somewhat open source. So you can bolt it onto anything. You can bring it into a community and say, hey, we're going to use this Mindful App to get us coordinated and to get us all aware about with each other. You could use it as a form of support for, especially for employees. It is designed even for large companies to offer metaphysical support to their employees through licensing. And so it's a bigger process. Instead of saying, let's just create another social media network, I said, we're going to create what in my world, which would be the biggest and the final creation to this level in dealing with technology. Because quite frankly, I do want to enjoy the volcanoes and enjoy the beach and enjoy my people and enjoy the tribe and everything about much more than I would want to sit in front of a computer and keep programming things. So that means I need to make this the somewhat the end all finish all of me working with technology to this level. And so with all things considered, when we say powered by Mindful App, that means that Mindful App is actually installed inside of Secret Energy, but is also being developed as something that can be placed anywhere and then actually bring a person into that ecosystem to enjoy this connection with not only the people that are in their groups or in their institutions that it's used at, but also people who are already resident inside of the ecosystem. So that's a power move, because what we're doing is we're basically planning a mass exodus from this institutional social media into what we call the collective growth. And I'll be very clear about that. We're not saying that this is designed to actually keep people off the internet or get them to stop using cell phones. That comes later on. That's like our far-reaching plans of eventually what would happen anyway once you become sovereign. But before then, since most people are actually using these platforms, we started to really dig into, well, why are people using these platforms anyway? And I ask that question to myself. I don't go out places and ask and do surveys and all that kind of stuff because I'm very abreast of technology. But what really stuck out is to remember that time, and especially for some of ye old fogies, about how much you used to pay for a long distance call. Do you remember how much you used to pay for a long distance call? Anybody in a foreign country, and then calling your aunt or your uncle over somewhere else, even if it was from Mexico to US, if it was, from China to the US, you had to go get this calling card. And you get on the phone and you're literally looking at the thing and you're like, okay, yo, this is and then that phone bill, you would keep talking. Remember that phone bill? Like if you had the thing, it wasn't a card, you could just call directly, right? And then you would start talking and everything, and you would know this was $3 a minute, but somehow the conversation was so good, you would feel like you wasn't going to get that big phone bill. And then it will roll through, and the phone would be cut off for 3 or 4 months. At least in my life, that's what I experienced. The phone's cut off for 3 or 4 months. You're trying to get this in your auntie's name now, and it's just because this cost of communication was so high, people have forgotten about it. So thus they forgot about even why they're even using social media at this stage, especially as a communicative component. Likewise, when Prodigy, which was like before American Online, and these systems that the military had actually began to release to the public that we're calling the internet today, when these systems were first released, the phenomenon like America Online of you beginning to communicate with someone that was across the world, and from a different country, but in real time, I can remember the first time I jumped into a chat room and I saw the people communicating, and I just typed, are you real people? And then the guy responded, yeah, you laugh. Of course you're real people. And it was like that happens to everyone. And I remember that first time. So this is 15, 20, 30 years ago. That first time as a kid being inside of a chat and communicating with other people. So see, there's a big thing about communication that we're into, and we're not just addicted to it. It's actually a part of our life. Without communication, we're nothing. And so what happens is we have no perception of a lot of things without the communication. And so we have to realize that at the core of the social media engagements that you see now with Instagram and Facebook is just communication. People want to actually talk to other people instantly, right away. And they even not only just want to talk, they want to just send pictures and they want to do all this stuff. So they want to keep this communication going. But of course, the drawback to that is when you're always sending things out and you're communicating out, and especially if you can do that at great distances, you often forget what's around you. And this has been the biggest complaint about social media, is that people stop going places. Even when people are places, they're looking at their phone. They're not paying attention to their family anymore. They're not paying attention to their kids. They're actually on these devices communicating and showing people around the world, including their friends, what they're doing at this very moment. Okay. So truthfully, nothing in there is not expected to occur. And if you want to flag it as bad and flag it as good, that doesn't actually give us an answer or a resolution to the situation. We just have to see it as it is and expunge the truth from it, which is that people want to communicate, and then figure out a solution that is going to allow us to restore what we lost and keep what we gained. And this is one of the biggest aspects of how we're coming into this, because when we're saying again that we're planning a exodus from these mass media institutions, it's in social media institutions, it's because they actually don't have our interest in mind. And that doesn't need to be argued. We know that these are marketing platforms and they're only looking to basically keep selling the advertisements that roll across the side of the site. And if anybody really asks themselves, have you ever seen an advertisement on or before a YouTube video from somebody else? Have you ever seen an advertisement on Secret Energy for somebody else? No. So for 10 years, we never benefited off of what most of these institutions, most of even the conscious and the wellness communities are benefiting from, as far as the payments they're receiving for advertisement, because we feel that would dilute our integrity and dilute our truth, because we cannot govern everything that a person sends across our sites as an advertisement and say that is actually in harmony and in resonance with exactly what we believe as our creed. And so we've never done it. And now what we realize is that was not only just a great decision not to do that, but also it brings us into the next stage of what should be developed, though. Like, if we're going to share someone's stuff, if we're going to endorse someone, who would it be? Because you would also need that input output. So I'm going to explain that here in just a moment. But as I keep going, we also know that it has to be a robust alternative. And what that means is, yeah, you can go and start a site on Wix. You can go drop a little social media thing, plug in into a WordPress site. But the ability for it to be robust, meaning taking in 100 to 200,000 members without it melting, would be in question. It's pretty much impossible. And so our goal here now, and we are reaching that goal, and actually even rapidly even going past that goal with some of the new things that we're creating, is to give people an alternative, because this is the most important thing to remember, because we can often blame everyone for using these platforms still, despite we know so much about them. And I still got a Facebook profile. You'll see me on Instagram. But this is because there's also no alternative. When the smoke clears and we're done complaining about everything else around us, what you'll also notice is if somebody said, well, shoot, I'm leaving Facebook today and I'm going to, because I still want to communicate, I still want to connect, but I don't want to be somebody's paycheck over here only and just give away, they watching my information. I don't want to be a part of that anymore. And of course, there's overarching things that they're doing. I don't want to inherit any of that karma. But where am I going to go to make this long distance phone call? And so what we decided is that there is enough demand of people to want to move beyond the Instagrams and the Facebook, but there's actually no alternative. And the great thing is that we launched in on that alternative specifically about 2 years ago in developing a robust platform, something that can take in thousands of members, and also a lot of the things that's wrong with social media, since the whole goal is to keep you on the site with social media, but that is not our goal. We actually don't want people to spend that much time, more time than they need to inside of our platforms. We rather have them out there physically. So we wanted to design a platform that actually pushes you to get into the physical engagement, right? And we started that 2 years ago, but now the top trending apps do that, like meetup apps, all these apps, even Tinder, these apps are putting people together in the physical. And that's why they're beginning to aggressively pass certain apps that are not capable of doing that. But once again, where is the app for conscious people? Where are the technologies for conscious people? And are these technologies just replicas of the systems that we're in now? Or is there something new about these technologies that allow us to make a migration even from dealing with the digital world as we're dealing with it? Because we have a lot to do on the ground. So this is all of what's in mind. So I'm just explaining here that we're no dummies. We're not just sitting back here thinking of replicating something that's already out. We're challenging ourselves to create something new that will not also create something that just becomes hypocrisy to what we've already begun and developed so far. So this is a very powerful aspect of going into things. And I also think that we somewhat have reached the cap here in the meeting, and maybe that new boost didn't take hold. So if you do see someone just out there, let them know that there will be a recording of today's conversation, or if you get some messages. I just wanted to leave that message here. I suppose I'd need to restart this entire system for that upgrade to take place. So we'll keep going here. So I'm going to show some screens of this new technology and this new development as it's functional. And as I will give the disclaimer now that you're actually looking at things in the process of their development, as far as when we create the outer page of something, because that's the easiest part. What must go underneath that is all the code and the functionality. So we've obviously started with building all of the code and the functionality of what we need. And then we slap some skin over the top of it at this point to be able to toy with it on the outside, which is called the GUI. So when you go into Facebook, when you go into the comment box, or when you hit next and all those buttons, that's all the GUI. But what's underneath that, of course, is all the code that makes all that function. So when we're building something, we have to work with the code. And then the last part is to actually build the outside. So we've just got to the point of finishing a lot of the code and putting on that outside. So just be aware of that as you look at some of the stuff that I'm going to present right now. And also it gives you a bigger picture of exactly what I was talking about before in developing something that actually is different than what we're dealing with so far. So we want to connect with people worldwide, and we don't want to neglect those that are around us. So the first thing that we would need to create is something that is profile centric. And what that means is that if you go into Secret Energy now, you'll notice that unlike even Facebook, it's not really profile centric. So you kind of go in there and it's like an information smorgasbord. Or buffet. And so what we want to do is we actually want to bring more awareness, for a reason, to each individual that is actually inside of the platform. And so that's what we call profile centric. And so we're changing Secret Energy. And so let me do some screen captures here. completely changing secret energy and actually upgrading things. And this is actually what you're looking at now is the new system. And let me move me out of the way here. So we're inside of the new system. And let me push that update. And let me blow this up a little bit. This is our homepage, and no one will ever see this again. And again, some of this stuff is still like placeholders, and some of this stuff is exactly what's supposed to be here. But I'm just going to go through this so you get the point of the flow. And by the way, because the option of affiliation is almost automatic when coming into the platform, meaning when you come into the platform, you're already an affiliate, then you can actually see the site as a person who is looking to get into sovereignty and looking to use secret energy as a way, and Mindful app as a way of getting into sovereignty. You can look at this as when you recommend the site, because that's all it's necessary to do. You don't even have to recommend any product. When you recommend the site, this is what the person that you're recommending it to, the seeker, this is what they're coming into. And when they're coming into this, this is an experience that they have that even if they didn't come in clicking on a colon cleansing kit or something to buy, eventually as they're going through this, we believe in input output, meaning that if you don't have anything, come on in. If you have something, come on in. So either way, we got you. We've designed something that if a person has absolutely nothing but the will to continue to benefit themselves as far as their awakening, we can take them all the way through the stages of even developing currency for themselves and actually even developing their own career, etc. Likewise, if somebody's already really done well for themselves in the world, and they're just looking to get into something that is also going to assist them and that they can, even begin to acquire things that are going to help them more, then of course we have something for that too. So it's just important to realize that this platform, it has no gates or walls where someone coming in cannot get to the next stage because they're lacking something that they have to provide for themselves. The only thing that they have to provide is their own will to really do this. They can't be playing around because we can't make anyone do anything. But if you're serious about this, then it will turn, it will give traction, and it's already doing that now. Also, everything that you're looking at here has already been through at least an alpha testing. This means that it's already been designed in a certain way, maybe not even looking like this, but in another system, and then used by someone else and debugged in a way where we remove things that just didn't work out. And I'll explain that in just a little bit. But to understand this, what we felt like is that our homepage, which you never see again after you sign up, should just give you the actionables of what's going on in secret energy. And for a person that's coming into this, the best way to do that is a video. So you know that our brother Halo is always cooking up the dope videos. So he's got something there for us that's just going to constantly rotate and send people into knowing what this is really about inside. They're encouraged right then to sign up or to log in. They see the reviews of other people who have enjoyed the platform, which we have thousands of at this stage. And we haven't even called for people to do reviews. But we can imagine just, some of the comments that we get inside of YouTube about how secret energy has already changed their life. So those are our reviews that will roll. And then here we have right away a call towards the emphasis of this platform. Because another thing with secret energy is it's kind of like an elephant gun in many ways, that it sometimes doesn't hit stuff directly as far as what you want. It's kind of like a blah, you could go and you could go over here to conscious entrepreneurs. You could go over here to spiritual advisors. You could go to the store. So what happens with that, though, why it may be like a Disneyland, metaphysical Disneyland, is that there's no actual focus, though, sometimes of what exactly can I do with this platform? What is the service? And we find in social media or in anything to do with the internet, and this is, of course, going through analysis courses that have nothing to do with metaphysics, but more to do with exactly why people go to websites and what they're looking for and how they get there, how long they stay, and retention and all that kind of stuff. So in us studying that, we found that it's important to whatever it is that we want everyone to engage in, that we feel is going to be the most beneficial to them, that we state that and have that there in front of them. And so I know that sounds like it should be obvious, but it's not so obvious when you start building stuff, because you start just building a rainbow and building all these services and building all these things for everyone. But you really want to focus that in. So right now, what we focused everything in on is sovereignty mentorship and this accumulation of karma-free wealth. And we've done that from a level of a person can start off even right now as a specialist, which is absolutely free, or they can jump right in with us and even start going through the first parts of the genealogy process, which we're going to talk about here in a moment. And they could do all that right now. And then also, of course, when the new site starts, they can jump into that and start getting this process of not only interacting with tribe, but beginning to build themselves and know more about themselves so they can get that going on right away. So that's our greatest emphasis here is the Mindful app bolted in with genealogy, which you'll know what all that means in a minute, is the emphasis that we're pressing everyone towards to complete and to get involved in so they'll know more about themselves. And then, of course, the platform already contains all the things that and actually not all the things. We've removed some stuff from Secret Energy that we felt that wasn't serving the new purpose. And we've put in some things into the new Secret Energy that we felt was missing from the old Secret Energy that didn't allow us to achieve the purpose. So we still have our directories. We still feel like it's very important to highlight new people that are coming along with their messages. And let me turn me on a little bit here. We feel like it's important still to highlight people that are coming in and delivering an amazing message. Also other conscious networks, websites, and just as that directory. So we still have that directory, and it's actually gotten a bit more beefed up. And so now we can actually begin to even isolate some of the greatest teachers of all time and also begin to send you messages about, hey, check out this work. And so we just have the metrics installed that allows us to see that based on what you're saying. So if you say, hey, my friend, he just got enlightened. He's already got 3 videos on YouTube and he's on fire. Check it out. You can send it to us. If it's on fire, he'll be right up there into this directory, and he will be getting exposure from people who are always looking for new talent that's coming in the metaphysics to give them greater insight. We also have a full-blown system of communication that's very dialed in specifically. And so what this is about, and that's what this is itemizing down here, and what it's basically talking about is, one, a geolocation-centric chat. And what this means is that instead of chats like our Discord chat being separated within groups, now our chats are groups of topics, like vegetarian and or veganism and etc. It's now load balanced through location. So this means that you'll be able to see people in your area and out to a certain radius that actually vibe with the same things that you vibe with. And you're able to change that by indicating your interest the moment that you come into the platform. So the moment that you come into the platform, part of the sign up process, which you will see on certain sites, is for us to understand your interests. And we ask you to pick 3 or 4 interests. And then with those interests, we link you up with people that also have those same interests. And we show you people in your area that have those same interests. So we feel like that this is a good prerequisite for understanding if you even want to engage in communication. So putting that information back on your side, and also putting that awareness, because genealogy is also in this, but putting the awareness of who it is that you're communicating and what status you can communicate on. So do you see, it's like if you see somebody else that's also interested in cryptocurrency, then you can actually ask them a question about that without getting the response, well, I don't even know what cryptocurrency is. Tell me more. So this just helps a lot with relevancy, and it helps really to allow people to find those that are able to help and build with them, especially locally in their area. So we felt that that was very important. The next thing is that what I was talking about is the profile centric aspect of things. And what you're looking at, and let me move me over a little bit more here, is actually our activity feeds. And you would be familiar with activity feeds. Let me get myself out of the way here. You'd be obviously familiar with activity feeds from things like YouTube or things like Facebook. But the activity feed is really what a social network is. And it's just because if you're watching what your friends are doing, especially if they're in your interest range, it not only gives you even an idea of what they're doing today, it actually even allows you to see if that's something that you're doing. I mean, just way more connection. I don't have to give all the details to just how relevant it would be to understand that you have friends that like the same thing that you like in your area and that they're tribe and you can link up with them. But this is our activity feed. And again, there's still some CSS and some design stuff that needs to be done because we have to, again, underneath test all this stuff out. But you're just seeing how it would appear and how when you share, just like with Facebook, you would get not only that information on your side, but also people who have saved you as a tribe member, which is what we're calling it versus a friend. They would see it on their side, and then you would be able to develop this Instagram like or social feed like style of communicating with tribe on a daily basis. And even when you leave Secret Energy, because this is a brand new site that you're looking at, it is not the old system is still up. Secret Energy obviously is on right now, but this new system is being developed elsewhere, and then we're plugging that into Secret Energy. So when we go live, which we plan to do in the second week of September to go live for beta users, then we switch into this. And also, I will make a note that everything here that you're seeing is fully responsive. And let me just pull in real quick on my browser. And what that means is that everything that is being presented is designed to be presented on the mobile device. And the reason why that's obviously important is that's the new trend. Everybody is going over to mobile. So even these menus, which we have these beautiful pop-out menus that help you navigate the site, and especially into the core areas. So this is like a core area menu, and because the store is kind of like its own thing, it has its own menu. But all of this is responsive, so it allows you to, as you're benefiting from the resources inside the platform and all the growth potential, to do all that while being mobile. So you don't actually have to come in every single thing on the site. It cannot be put into the site unless it's responsive. So that's one of the things that I feel like is very important to point out, because it means that it's geared for the future and for everybody to use it as they move along. So again, you have your social feeds here, and then we have what we're calling the profile centric approach. And the profile pages are kind of like our last thing that we do, because it's just continuously writing code for things that need to populate inside this page and then just doing the GUI. But what you'll have here is that you'll have all of your honors. And of course, the honors was a part of OHMS. That's a part of the Secret Energy platform that we have now. Of course, if you log in, you get points for logging in. If you rate, you get points for logging in. If you review, you get points for reviewing. And what all that does is it accumulates these ohms, and you can spend these ohms directly in the store. That's working now. You can go to Secret Energy, and even if you just signed on, you have 300 ohms, which I think is the equivalent of about $5. And there's a little slider, and you can slide that all the way over during checkout, and you can spend your ohms, and it'll take that amount off of your invoice when you check out. So we continue that system, but there's going to be so many actionable points to earn ohms and then translate them into joules. But most importantly, there's honors, which actually allows us to see, and others to see, just how active you've been in the mindfulness. Not so much in the platform, but in mindfulness, because we're able to track so many different things related to mindfulness, how many meditations you've participated in. Because in these streams, we have the ability to go live in any of these streams at a moment's notice. So all of the streams at a moment's notice. So what this means is that we'll now start seeing these morning meditations that literally consist of thousands of people, just like what you would see, obviously, when we boot up YouTube, especially when we've been going really strong for a few weeks. We get these huge crowds. Like I think we had hit 8,000 people tuning in live just the other show. So imagine 8,000 people now live every morning for the meditation and those kind of things that we're able to do now that we actually have control over the technology, and we're able to do that because it's our stuff. So these are the benefits of, going through the process of developing something like this. And so again, what the honors do is it allows us to somewhat have a check and balance system, especially if we're communicating with somebody that we don't necessarily know. And then they're proposing that they've been able to accomplish so many things inside the platform and doing all this. Well, that would show on your honors. And this is not to create a ranking system of one person being over another, but it's actually to create an awareness around what a person is actually doing, and also to give them an incentive to actually do more by earning these badges or medallions, if you may, which will be displayed on their profile. And obviously this is somewhat of a blank profile, but you have your bio, you have your timeline, which is basically your feed, as you would always see inside of a social media platform. Is you got to see just what you posted and not just what your friends are posting. Also, you got your seekers, and these are people that are actually following you. And then you have your tribe, which is actually people who you're following. And then, of course, we have our OHMS gateway, which we're bringing in. And that just allows you to be able to exchange and convert and to spend and to view everything in relation to your OHMS and the gamification and how many points you need to earn a certain reward, etc. So that's what you would see inside of your profile now. So moving right along, because there is just a little bit to get into the conversation. I'm planning on finishing at the top of the hour here for those who want to understand the time frame to what is going to happen here today. We have our store, so that same aspect of just bringing in what is needed. So it's a very minimalist and clean approach at right now. What we're really gravitating towards is that it's not so much as selling products, it's actually getting people the right products. And this is what we're going to talk about in Eneology here in a moment. But in that process, when a person does come in, they don't see anything else except for exactly what they need to see. And they're able to navigate very easy as to what we feel like is something that they're going to need assistance with. And so here the emphasis is on the main store page for a person to go and fill out their vibratory analysis form, which is a form that we've actually created and we've redesigned it. So it's a lot less on the question side. But it allows us to basically dial into exactly what the person needs. And then a live soul coach will be able to give you recommendations and even deploy the first stage or first phase of the Eneology, which is actually what tells you more about yourself. And that's also what's giving us the information of what you really would need to do now in a good, better, best way, meaning that you can always make a recommendation for someone, but you want to have that on a sliding scale, most of the time based on commitment. If they have no commitment at all, then this is exactly where you're going to need to go. That's going to cost you the least amount and give you and cost the least amount of effort, versus if you're just ready to do this and you got all the time and all the energy ready for it, here's that recommendation. So that's what the vibratory analysis form does. And so instead of just turning people loose on what I would believe now is something to the tune of 50 products, what we're doing is we're really giving the opportunity for each person to learn what products they actually need to use through a person who already knows more about those products. And that's, of course, our soul coaches. And so you're seeing just a few of the pages here for products. And the reason why this makes it this is important to see is because for those who are actually working with the affiliation, now you can actually understand more of why your own clients would be able to come in and get all the information about specific products and even how to do somewhat of a self-analysis on themselves, which would definitely push them into the financial event, but in a way where they would know completely about what it is that they're purchasing. And so there have been landing pages, if you may, developed for all of our top products. And we've also itemized the benefits of those products, everything that you can think of that is necessary to know about these products. So that's for the University. This is, of course, for monatomics here. We have a help desk behind this. So of course we answer the most pertinent questions, but we have live support, as you know, on the site for those who need to know more about things. But this leaves less questions for your seekers or your clients and others to ask because all the information is already here. So as you see for our top products such as She Legit, monatomics, our Tibetan medicine, etc., we now have a minimalist approach at our pages and giving everyone the information that they need to make a decision on whether they want to utilize that product for their benefit. So this brings us to, because there doesn't need to be much on that, it's just a store, but this brings us to actually Eneology, which is the next phase of the conversation that we want to have today about what really makes Secret Energy powered by Mindful App so different than what's out there, and how do we plan on making a mass exodus from getting people to make a mass exodus from social media when there just would be technically going into just another, in their mind, version of Facebook, but just for conscious people. Although we believe that is enough, by the way. I actually believe personally that even just having a conscious social network that is fully functionable to this level, especially when we incorporate those geolocation chats, etc., is already booming. It's a place that people will want to be and visit. But, we never settle for just, it's okay. We go all the way. So we're going all the way in. And how we do that is we're actually bringing in what we've already learned in ambassador training. And we're scaling up what we've already been doing at Sovereignty Mentorship. And we're bringing that into a full-blown adaptation, which you can call Eneology. And some have already read about Eneology. It actually is a page on the fund.secretenergy site, which of course is our funding page for funding the Mindful app. And there are some tabs up here that are called stages. And these stages actually get you to other pages or different things that the main things that we want to integrate within the complete build of the platform. And one of those things is Eneology. And so let me explain to you very briefly what Eneology is and why it's so important. And it's because we have a few needs out here right now, and they're not wants, they're needs. And there's a big difference, because something that you want is like a desire, while something that you need, if you go without it, then something is not going to function. So we're talking about needs. So there's a need actually for conscious employment. Like, it's getting ridiculous out here. Like, even these, we had a conversation yesterday about how there are tests to actually show you what you would excel in more that are being conducted by the government, especially when it comes to government funding. So let me just bring that into full scope. The government will actually pay at times for a person's education. They were actually doing this for single mothers. And they were running this test on them. And by the completion of this test, they would know what that mother would be more good at. And they would give her then an option of taking these certain courses to actually get a degree or to get some kind of education in that field. And actually, we had a sister with us that actually had participated in one of those. And she said when she took the course, because she was good at numbers and they could indicate that from the course, they decided in the end that they would pay for her to go and be an accountant. So she went through the whole training because they paid for it through a scholarship. And then when she was done, she did that for 2 years and totally was obliterated by the numbing of numbers. That even though she was good at numbers, it wasn't what she wanted really to do. And it's because it still doesn't matter if you find out a person's uniqueness and what they want to do. You generally find then after that, there may not be any employment for that particular position. And in fact, many of us may be experiencing that right now. It's like you have this thing that you like doing, but actually going and get a job and doing it is a whole nother matter. Or being an entrepreneur with it is also even a whole nother matter, because it's not even just presenting what you have. It's also learning marketing and learning the computers and getting people and doing so there's so much. And so it could be disheartening at times because we feel like our idea is golden enough to make it happen. But then when we hit the wall of, well, but you also need to learn C+, and you need to know how to work heat spots and do Facebook ads and all this kind of stuff. It's like, well, shoot, I didn't sign up for that, nor do I have an interest in that. So we addressed all of that already. And that's what ambassador training was about. It's just the core emphasis on why are we making it difficult on each other? This is not a job. So I'm not in a competition with everybody about that somebody's going to come and take my job. So that means that I can afford to really give my uniqueness, give what I'm the greatest at doing really for free. I can contribute that for free as long as everybody that I'm around is actually doing somewhat similar to that. And then we can create a synthesis of everybody's gift. So if I'm great at marketing, or somebody else is great at computers, or somebody else is great at building, or someone's great at the meditation, when we synergize that and put it all together, we get a summary of all of that, a synthesis of all of that. And so that's really what ambassador training is. And it's beautiful. It's going on right now. But now, of course, we want to scale it up. Everything here is about, again, scaling up to the process of, so how are we going to do this for 103 or 300 or 1 million people without it degrading what we have going on right now? Because you can automatically imagine that if hundreds of thousands of people come in all of a sudden, then everything's going to get crazy. So how do we prepare for that? Because we know hundreds of thousands of people are going to come in, because that's a part of our creation, our co-creation, and that's a part of our projection. So how we would handle that is something like this. So the first thing is that, so we have this need for conscious employment, right? But then on the same flip of the coin, we also need conscious training. So we can check that off. So also we need this common denominator in awareness. I can't say this enough. In fact, I got to go back to the main screen, the common denominator in awareness. The reality is that we're going to continuously argue over the petty stuff and whose values are the best and all these kind of things if we don't have some type of common denominator with how we're functioning. In addition, if this common denominator is very judgmental, like the Bible is a common denominator, but it's super judgmental. And in fact, it's more of a punishment-based system rather than a reward-based system. But it does function as a common denominator in families. And this is why it becomes so instrumental, at least for the basis of how most families run. Because if the husband is cheating and the wife says, you cheat on me, the husband can't really say that it's just the wife antagonizing him about cheating. She can bring up the Bible and say, hey, but you're not supposed to cheat. Now, this becomes very rudimentary, and that's why it hasn't served to its full potential of what something like that can do, just the Bible. But if we put something in that actually gives us a greater range of understanding who we're dealing with and who we're communicating with and who we're talking to, and how they can grow, then we actually put something in that becomes the common denominator. So it doesn't matter what we're doing. And if we're creating a community and we don't have a common denominator, it will only work for a certain period. If we're in our house and we don't have a common denominator, it will only be in harmony for a certain period. So I see a lot of people developing new things and they're planning on having lots of people involved. Anything that you are planning on having lots of people involved, if you don't have that common denominator that is feeding everybody in that, then somebody is going to get burned out, somebody's going to get abused, and someone is going to complain about, and then you're going to just find it falling apart. So what genealogy is it's the end of all of that. It brings in something that, one, it serves you. And this is something important to realize here, is that even if we all got along and everybody's helping to build Mindful app, if 10 years later you're still that same person and there's virtually nothing, that Mindful app's big and it's grown and you helped build it, but you're still that same person, you're going to feel like you let yourself down. And I've watched people go through this process with their jobs and with their marriages and all sorts of things that they've engaged in for a prolonged period, that they were putting so much energy in, they kind of forgot about themselves. And then so when it was all said and done with, as everything has a tendency to change, they were left feeling empty. What genealogy does is, at every single point, you're not only educating yourself about yourself, you're also educating yourself about others and how they function. And in all of that, you're gaining a heightened stage of awareness, especially a metaphysical awareness of how to communicate, and thus how to, I guess the term that I'm looking for is how to actually benefit from every single interaction that you have. Because if we be honest at times, generally, if we say something, it's to get a response back. Even if that's a thought, or even if that's a conversation, if we interact with someone, it's generally to get something back. Like if I say, hey, what's up? I'm looking at you to say, oh, I'm good. So there's always something that needs to come back. So what if every single engagement that we made, we got the result that we were looking for back? This is a way that can actually happen, because you would know who you were communicating with. And in fact, you will restore what's most important in a relationship, which is the love. And the love is actually knowing about the person. Because you can't name something at all that you love that you didn't want to know everything about, especially when you were going through that phase of being in love with it. So truly being in love with something, as we use that term all the time, I love you, I love tribe, is actually to really understand the person in which you're saying that you love, or the thing in which you're saying that you love. So that's most important to realize here, is that this gives real-time information about you, and it gives real-time information about those that you're communicating with, and that you're able to query this system or have people use this system to gain more awareness about themselves. Okay, so that's an explanation of what genealogy is. So let's keep going forward with genealogy and what it's capable of doing. So the next thing here is that, so we would have this common denominator then, because the common denominator would immediately come in and it would say, because these paths are very specific, as you're going to see here in a minute, there's 9 paths, hence the term genealogy. So you would even be able to know if you're asking a certain person that's on a path to do X, if it's not really even in that person's path to even accomplish that, that's just not their thing, why even try to force them to do it? So that's what this is really about. It gives you a hindsight of, hey, you're trying to communicate with a person that doesn't even communicate that way, or you're trying to even ask them to do something that is totally against their principles. Be mindful of that. So this actually installs ultimate mindfulness. And in a communal setting, this is important, because now we're able to actually organize things from the beginning so that they would be complete, versus later on figuring out, oh man, I shouldn't have put those two together, or I shouldn't have combined that in with that, because I now see that was a mistake. So it decreases the amount of mistakes. Now, a good example of this is that, it's kind of a bad example because I have to use NASA, but they say that when they send somebody up in a shuttle, because there's going to be only, let's say, 6 people on board, they spend at least 4 or 5 months in closed settings working on the communication, and then they monitor that communication to understand if they need to have more extroverts, another introvert, a comedian, and all these different things. Because if you're going to be up there for that long, and it's going to be everybody crammed into this little space or even a big space, but they're going to need to work together, it doesn't mean that if you just pick randomly a bunch of people to go, y'all 10, go, that you wouldn't all of a sudden have a fight on board the shuttle. So this is important to realize, especially for those who are planning on succeeding in their lives and not having to keep repeating doing something that could be rather intense from a resource level and from an energetic level, to put something in that actually allows the stability of everyone involved, because we know what we're dealing with. So that's what eniology is. You know what you're dealing with and you know who you're dealing with. So let's talk a little bit about that let me see. So we got this common denominator coming in. Let me just check over my notes, make sure I'm on track. I just wanted to make a personal note here that ambassador training is revolutionary. Like, for those that are participating and involved, they know this. But for those that are not in there, it is something that you may want to think about, and it's going on right now. And that's just that the connection that we all share together, and even the information, like a lot of the stuff that I'm telling you about now was demoed out already in ambassador training. We already have meditations that are a proper handshake with you and the deity within. So if you could say, I want to be initiated, this is the initiation, but you're initiating yourself into the deity within, in the total of awareness of how this is constructed. We've finally been able to get to that level of information. And how we were able to do that is through tracking down something that we could call synchronistic, or what you would also call syncretism. Syncretism is the idea or the art of being able to find a universal component that works on everyone, a common denominator, if you may, that functions with everyone. So that's what this actually is. Now, it's not one path for everybody. It's split into 9 paths, but it is just 9 paths. And within that, we actually can expunge at least 80% of the nature of the person and the being, while most people are generally aware of only about 30% of their true makeup and true awareness of being. So pushing that into the 80 percentile actually allows them to be able to do that much more, 4-5 times what they were capable of doing before, as far as harnessing their own internal power and abilities. So we're talking about a collaboration of one, personal experience. Nothing can ever trump personal experience in itself. But personal experience, systems such as human design, life paths, Joydish numerology, astronomy, all of these systems all being merged into one collective form of very specific information about the person and about their path. And we're just rolling that all under the title of eniology. So that's what eniology is. It's metrics that actually allow you to dial into yourself based on several components that we've expunged from bona fide systems that are still even being used and some less known about in the reality today, without overcomplicating it. Because the other thing is that if we just give you a bunch of information, it lacks the personal touch. So this is about actionables. I don't believe at all that this information can't be found elsewhere. What this is about is we are incorporating a personal touch that not only allows this information to come to you, but it also allows someone to be somewhat responsible with getting this information to you in the increments in which you would be able to ingest it. So kind of breaking it down for you. And for us to see that even on an astronomical level is that the moon actually breaks down the energy from the sun, so that way we can process it. And so there's a lot of myths and a lot of confusion and a lot of conspiracies because a lot of people don't know. But it's the same act of what your mother is doing with you as a child in the womb. She eats something and then she is breaking it down, because she is then your sun. She is breaking it down, which is or she is then your moon. And she's breaking it down so that way that you can actually eat it. So that's what the action is here, is being able to have those components that are able to refract this potent knowledge into a bite-sized morsel that will benefit you at the stage that you're actually in. And so this actually goes in phases. So we also have now, really briefly, I'm going to demo out what that would look like for a person that would be engaging in their path or getting that actionable run on them. So what you would be looking at now, let me pull that up here, is you're looking at a complete path of how we would write it out. Let me turn my screen on here. Let me blow this up a little bit. So of course on our end, it doesn't get the fancy GUI. It doesn't just come in as an update on the phone looking all nice with the 30 pix rounded edges. It actually has to start with the core writing and the system itself and every single phase of the system. And I'm not going to go over this completely today, but I do want to show you, just in respect to when we're talking about phase 1, when we're talking about phase 2, and we're talking about phase 3 all the way into phase, whenever the phases end. And so at this stage, we could say the phases would end at phase 3. And in this, once you reach phase 3, you would know 80% about yourself and how you function and how this path, which is the path of the number 4, functions. So let's give a quick overview here of exactly how this would read out for a person, and how even a soul coach, and I think that's important to explain now, a soul coach would run this actionable on a person that's just come into the platform, because this is how you would create a scalable process with something that is as intricate as this. And so what I'm saying is that if you wanted to keep a personal touch to what you're doing, someone else would have to be responsible for making sure that another person is accountable for doing these things. So this is what makes the system so enigmatic, because we can actually do that with real people, because you have two different kind of people. You have the people that are coming in and they want to get it done to them. This is also a part of the vibratory analysis. Once we know certain information on the vibratory analysis, we're able to know the person's path. So they want to get it done. And I'm sure there's an endless amount of people that want to get this done on them, and it can be done for free. So obviously there will be no limits to how many people will be coming in and want this done. But then also on the same token, because we know that there's going to be many that are interested in this system and how to use it, and also how to become what we call a soul coach. After generally they get it done, they're going to start saying, well, shoot, and they're even recommended that maybe I should go and be an ambassador. And there's even a process that if you can't afford ambassador training, then we take you through a process of getting your weight up and how to utilize the affiliation so that you can join in on ambassador training. And then once you start ambassador training, which is now sovereignty mentorship, you would begin to not only access your path, but you would be around others who also are accessing their path. And you would learn in a timely manner how to actually read a path. But all the heavy lifting has been done for you. This is not like astrology where you got to learn all these different things about the degrees. All that kind of stuff will only just assist you and help you more with this. But corely, how we designed it is that you wouldn't even need to have much technical ability with computers and all the stuff that becomes a problem for what we feel like is our family. We eliminate that and we do the heavy lifting. But what's most important that we can't do, because there's only one of me, is the personal touch and the unique connection that we all need to share with knowing that there's a real person there behind all of this that is actually really concerned about whether or not I'm progressing through this. So that's what we have as the ambassador that is now morphing into the soul coach, because they've gone through ambassador training. They feel they're ready. They've gotten their certification and their go ahead, and now they become a soul coach. So this puts them in the position to actually run these actionables through a platform that we've already developed on their mobile device. So this is mobile wealth. Okay. And then on top of that, you have endless amounts of people that want to get it done. So there's never like, okay, well, we need leads and I got to go find leads and I got to go convince people to do this, because we are basically funneling these, what you would call warm leads, to you, which are people who have already filled out the VAF, as I mentioned, and they're ready to start running their phases. So what you should realize in that is that we have a very strong input output. We have a very strong, new people are coming in wanting it done, and other people who've already been in for a minute already now know how to do it. So even if we grow through let's say 100,000 people that are inside of the system and using it, we would then have an equivalent of 10,000 people who could actually run the system and give overwatch for those that are actually inside of it. And then that is continuously scalable. So it's something that I've never seen, something that is absolutely fresh to us, but it is a way to scale up into hundreds of thousands of people, but still keep a personal touch with what's being developed. So that doesn't come overnight, but it's happened. So if we're looking here very briefly at this path, what we notice is that there's the basic actionables, which is, instead of assuming that everybody has removed the fluoride from their house and everybody has gone on that cleanse, we start everyone off with the brief brush over of making sure that these things have been done. So this path actually starts off with water purification. It starts off with a meditative technique that is specific towards this path. Now, by the way, I'm sure there's going to be a question of how this particular enealogy path. Also, I guess backing up just a little bit here, it's important for everyone to be aware that when we're developing something, especially a year ago, what we have is working titles. So we will use working titles to be able to get to the next phase, because I got to write something in that box before I can write something in the next box, right? So we use these working titles. So we've had terms like life path, we've had terms like empath, we've had all these different terms, and we use those as placeholders to, when we finally get to the complete process, then we at times say, well, that name needs to change, or this is something, this is what we're going with. So some have been present for that entire process, but publicly we haven't really released any of this knowledge. So when it's released, it gets the actual titles and everything that is specific to it. So, but just remember, you're being bought in early, so you're actually seeing stuff when it still has its working title. So in this case, this is the genealogy path 4, and this is accumulated by only the person's birth date, just the date itself. So I'm born on the 22nd, so that would actually make me a path 4, because 2 plus 2 is 4. So in this case, we don't actually even need to take the entire birthday and summarize it. We don't need to take the entire time of birth and the place of birth and all that. Now that can be used, and we are developing even now another system that is more of like a fine-tooth comb that works with the time that you're born. But as it is now, this actually gives the knowledge just based on the actual day that you were born on. So it makes it really easy for us to make an assessment of who we're dealing with and actually get that path assigned. So that's how it works from a technical level on the back end for us. And so now if that person's on a path 4, they get this actionable. And so they're going to talk about this path very briefly and what's offered in this. And so we've separated what we deliver as far as information on a path between 4 different categories. 1, the power. And this literally means what's going to drive more power into your being. So that means a person coming in feeling weak can immediately look to their power column to figure out how to gain more strength. We have debilities, because we feel like that it's so important to not look at what you can't do or what may be imbalanced for you. It's so important for us to look at that, though, and to use that in its real context of what it should be used for. Something that you need to be aware of, something that you need to grow out of or overcome. But if it's not said, then you're not aware of it. And because we have so much connection and aspects of this information, we want to make sure you know your debility, so you know what to do about it. So let's read this real briefly so you can see how that will work. Because in this case, this debility of this path is loneliness. Now I'm a path 4, so I know a lot about this. And this is because this path 4 is often misunderstood. And what happens from that, and since they would rather not sometimes be around a lot of people who don't understand them, then they would just separate themselves and isolate themselves, which is very destructive for this path, because they have so much potential to do different things. But if they isolate themselves, they go into this depression, they become lonely, and they never complete their path. And this is most important to understand here, is that what we're looking to do is to get a person through their path, however long that takes, to get them through the completion of what their purpose is here, so that they can actually see the great picture to all of this. Because what we've learned in examining these systems is that we're everything. We begin as a synthesis, everything. So just as a seed contains everything that the tree has, but now it must go through the process of understanding what it even is. And that's what we're talking about here. And the best way to do that is through how you've been dialed in this time, as far as how you came in to this particular incarnation into the cosmos. And so we have these pointers here that are 1, the power, the debilities, the qualities, like, what is really your thing? What should you be spending more time doing and knowing more about that you're capable of doing? So that way you can put that at the forefront, your qualities versus your debilities. Because sometimes you can even be doing things that are encouraging your debility. And then finally, just advice, flat out good old advice about, hey, we got the experience. So especially since the people who've wrote these paths, because we've come in on a collective in getting this information together, has even also been compiled by people who are actually on the path. And since everything inside the platform, as we talked about, Power by Mindful app, is centralized around this type of information, it becomes really easy even to see products that are better for a person's path, situations that are better for a person's path, even supporting numbers. What that means is that sometimes as a number 4, number 8 are really supportive for number 4. So you're even able to see at a glance who in the platform or even in your area is a number 8. So that way you can actually connect and put together maybe something that is possibly broken within or not giving you that completion that you're looking for. So this is endless to what it can create. But I'll finish here by talking about some specifics on this path because there's some specifics with every path. This information is only generalized in areas such as water purification and those kind of things. And then it gets very specific with stuff like here. This is a limitless path because found out what we found out in Geolocation numerology. This path connects to a being known as Rahu, which is seen as a being that has no head, which corresponds to what we would call the dark side of the moon or the north node of the equinox. And just simple knowledge here is that the moon is seen as very instrumental as far as influencing all paths, all signs for one specific reason, because some may argue with that. Let's say, for instance, you're a Scorpio. We'll just use the Greek system. You still act a totally different way if it's full moon versus if it's new moon. Just think about that just for yourself, that every person here on the planet has a slightly different aspect of how they act or behave based on the phase of the moon. And this is why in these systems of, especially the ancient systems of astronomy, I like to use that term versus astrology, there's never the lack of paying attention to how those ecliptics and how that energy is actually moving. So in this case, this path is not about a planet. It's actually about an ecliptic of the moon. And this being is seen to be headless. Okay. And these are all ancient metaphors for a certain aspect of being. And without elaborating on the story of how that being became headless and whether that's even important, because it's all deep metaphors, it's important to just understand that the quality is limitless and because of this headlessness. And this comes because when you're just a head and you don't have a body, you don't have any limits. Now, of course, that could work for you either way. It could be a pro or a con for you. But it's just an awareness that you're capable of what I call the Hail Mary, the thing that actually doesn't seem like it can even be achieved in the reality. If you can get a path number 4 to work on it, there's a greater probability that they'll be able to accomplish it, even if it's impossible, because they're designed to do limitless, impossible things. Why? Because they don't have a body. So if I'm eating, let's say, for instance, and I don't have a body, it means I never feel like I got full. It means I can keep eating, keep eating. Now, of course, this is horrible if you have some kind of addiction, but it brings you into a stage of awareness of even why people on this path can tend to be a bit more addicted to things than others. It's because they don't actually feel that they're getting enough. They don't feel that satiation. So this is what we're talking about in relation to qualities. Also, this is a Robin Hood path. And what I mean by that is, because I've taken some stuff and had to put it into modern terminology so it makes sense, is that this path indicates that the person that is on this path will gain the most fame and most awareness in their life by upholding the rights of the underdog, upholding the rights of those who are the downtrodden or the unbanked. Now, I read about this and I studied this within, I guess now I've been on this for about 6 months in this particular system. But that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years. And I can't say more than anything, just as an example, how doing this has been the windfall of my life as far as the greatest levels of the experience and exposure of what I could actually be capable of doing on this planet. But I wasn't given any ology to know that. So imagine now in the future, as our children are getting this information, you're getting this information. So you can even see directly, hey, that little inclination in me to always root for the losing team, because every time I turn on the TV, I don't care who was playing, I'll be like, I'm going with the one with the numbers down. It was like a natural inclination to always go for the underdog. But to realize where that comes from and then be able to catalyze it into something that becomes the stabilization to your reality and how you're even making your living in the world and how you're developing your uniqueness is king in saving time and saving energy, right? And so we got a final thing here, and that's the chameleon. And that's because this being also functions as a mirror, because it's again, the ecliptic or the north node. The other potential of this path is that when they get around other people, they immediately start to mimic what that other person is doing. It's very easy for them to do that. And some may remember some of my old recordings of when I would talk about how I had to mirror certain things and bring myself as a fly on the wall in certain situations and be able to gain insight from just doing that, and how that was so instrumental in me gaining so much spiritual knowledge. And sure enough, here it is written in the path that chameleon and mirroring like ability is also a power or quality. Now, the reason why we say this is a quality versus a power is because there are things also with that could be harmful for you. especially if you're not aware of this. You're not aware that you're a mirror and you have this toxic friend that you still want to assist, but you notice every time you get around them, you start cussing, you start doing all this crazy stuff, and you don't even know where it's coming from. You feel confused. You don't even know where it's coming from. Knowing your path lets you know immediately, oh, shoot, I was going to get that anyway because I'm a mirror and I'm picking up. And it allows you to also to compensate because you don't even have to get rid of the engagement with the person. You're just now being mindful that you have this aspect of mirroring people that you need to keep into your awareness, especially if you're having thoughts running through your head. And so obviously in phase 1, there's a recommendation, what we call the good, better, best, of what a person can do to start working themselves through this path and start getting the things that are going to increase their energetic potential and harmony. We talk about color therapy, every single aspect, just like what you would see in the cosmic calendar. And maybe someone can share the link there. We have a lot more information even than that's there now. And we just decided, let's just roll all that into genealogy. But it's every single correspondence that you can think of about this path in order for you to be able to harmonize or to amplify the energy within this path. And what's most instrumental about this also is that even though that this is a path and this could be about you, this is maybe your path because you're number 4. This is also an energy specifically. So when you're looking to bring that energy into something that you're creating, you only need to glance at the correspondences of that path, whether it's a color, whether it's a tune, whether it's a stone, and bring that into incorporation into what you're doing to bring that energy of that number into your environment. So it's a totally different way of how people are looking at deity and looking at all of the stuff externally. It's bringing it all in internally to allow it to be an alchemical measure for you to actually create levels of perfection in your life. And this actually comes from also the awareness of, if you understand magical cubes are numbers that whether you add them to the right or add them diagonally in the cube, they all equate to a certain number. But the interesting thing is if you move one number out of the place, then it doesn't work. And so this is to say, since we're able to identify that numbers are really archetypes and not just numbers created by the fake matrix to bother us, but actually archetypes. Once we realize that archetypical energy, we can also see what proper configuration we're supposed to be in, especially if we want to achieve or to accomplish something. And then that configuration, we're able to then look in our lives and say, is there a 2 up there? Is there a 5 up there? Is there a 3? Because that's going to equate to me getting perfectly what I'm looking for. And some people would say that this kind of thing is impossible, but it's not. And that's what I find so interesting about all of this is that we're being also given the opportunity to be the pioneers of this age in bringing and instilling this, especially within the Western traditions, but most importantly into everything that we feel like could be endeavors in life, school, community, job, everywhere. And that's why we feel that Mindful app in all of what we're developing, it's not just another solution for us to go into another social media platform. It's the way in which we changed everything. So continuing with this, in conclusion, so you see more of this path. I'll get into a little bit more because it does become quite interesting, just the things that we point out. And that's really what I'm drilling into here, is not so much as the aspects of things, but for every single path we have this. So it's important to understand what we're able to present. And we're able to present the days of alignment. There are, according to the cosmos and what you see in astronomy, days that this person will have in segments of days, weeks, even months, where they'll have really more power. And then other times where they probably would want to chill out a little bit. So it actually allows you to even gauge when you're going to go into your next project, because you just know you're going to have the whole current riding behind you. And even when you may not want to go into that project right now, especially if you can postpone it, if it's going to demand so much from you because you're not at your high point. Also, we get into the dosha, or the actual type of diet that really fits in with your path. And this is so specific for me. I'm air and I'm very fiery. I'm always hot. So for me to eat other things that are hot really just gets me going nuclear. So it doesn't help me. I actually have to eat cucumbers and coriander and things that cool me down a bit more. So knowing that is a bit more specific than saying just be a vegetarian. It gets you right into what it is that you need to balance out your chemicals in your body. And speaking of chemicals, we also have a term that is known as electrochemistry. chemical. And what that means is that the overall field around your body is electric in itself. That's what they call the body electric, the aura, etc. So this electrochemical field can often become disturbed by other forces that are around us, not just Wi-Fi, but even other people. So ways to stabilize that. Now, none of this is negative. I don't actually see the negatives and positives because in the ancient tradition, they don't see the negatives and positives as we see as good and evil. That's all immaturity. This is about understanding when you need to add and when you need to take away, and what you can add and take away with, what the alchemist has to perform this great work. So the reality is that this path also indicates that this person should actually use hessonite, which is actually a form of garnet. And what it does is it harmonizes electrochemically the nervous system. Because what happens is, and I can definitely attest to this, if I jump into an interview and the damn thing is not working, like what we started off with this, even right now, hey, the one we were broadcasting to YouTube, we can't hear it. Then something else going on, then my phone is buzzing off. I forgot to turn the ringer off. Oh, the notification pops up over here. What about last night? And all that's going on. Then I get nervous. And a lot of us have this kind of condition. But what that ultimately does to your focus and your overall wellness is catastrophic. So it's important to have things that, just like a grounding strap that an electrician has to have on before he's about to solder some sensitive chips. So too, hessonite grounds out these electrochemical imbalances that go on in a person that has this path number 4. And they can get crushed hessonite and even drink a little bit. They can actually make an orgone of it, which would actually amplify its energy, or they can buy a simple ring and that will assist them. Also, this is a fiery path, as I mentioned. So in this tense, it's saying that silver supplications, which is drinking out of silver vessels, such as silver cups and eating out of silver plates, is a way to consistently keep the body cool of a person who would normally run a bit hot. Okay. So we're also talking about, again, these debilities, and we're being very candid about the debilities. If you've ever been in a situation, and that's why I was saying it's important to have the common denominator, when you want to tell a person that they're really not good at something, but they think that it's coming from you, and how that just throws everything off. This is about being able to see it for yourself. And then if you want some assistance on it, because we don't look at it like weaknesses, we look at it as things that we can get better at, then you can actually be able to see that this person also has them too. So we all have debilities. So in this case, the astronomical weaknesses are telling you the days that you'll be more not at your height because of your ascendants and descendant energies, right? Also, that this path is prone to separation. Remember, no head. So that's all symbolic to the actual separation. This is also somewhat of a suicidal path, meaning thoughts of suicide come across the minds of a number 4 because they have no head, they have no limits. So they're always looking for beyond and beyond. And then when they don't get it, because they run into that loneliness, which is another debility, then they start contemplating suicide. And then they can even mirror that energy over to others, and others start feeling like they want to commit suicide and that they're confused. You see? So this helps you also in containing your energies, and also understanding when some of those energies may be around you and causing those kind of phenomena. And it just allows you to, again, be mindful about the engagement that you're in. So it makes you a connoisseur of your own life, and then also the lives of those that are around you, because you start to become more interested in their path and gaining that knowledge. And then once you're able to spout this off right from your consciousness, like right now, you can hit me with any number and I could tell you, because I've created a story out of this. And there's stories that have already been created out of this. The occultism in itself is this story. It's just the modern system is completely off, exactly 23 degrees off, but completely off. It's not designed to actually tell you the truth, really, which is alarming. Like, I thought that it would at least be close to the truth with some slight adjustments or things that weren't known. No, it was designed to not give you any of this knowledge exactly, and actually to give you the wrong knowledge, so you're just all confused. And that makes up much of modern astrology. So this person's also prone to separation. Remember, cut off head. So that's what I mean by symbolism too. Somebody would see the cut off head of Rahu and the teeth and the swallow in the sun and be like, a demon, it must be evil. And miss that all of those are actually symbols that are telling a certain story. So this path is prone to separation. And that literally means that they can feel like in a relationship that I want to be by myself now. So you can imagine how that plays out in a marriage. So just being aware of that, though, allows you to say, you know what, you're always going to want to separate because you don't have a head anyway. So keep this going to stay in balance with that energy. because it's never really good unless it's actually something that is going to take you out of a very toxic situation to actually separate. So you know where you're getting those inclinations from, though, about I'm ready to bone out and leave all this alone because I want to go and actually do something new, and where all that is actually coming from. And that's what makes us such a well-rounded being, because when you become well-rounded, you actually take up all the numbers versus just completing your own path. So this path is also a bit selfish. Now, the other thing about this, and I got to mention this now, is that while you're seeing these cards here, there is an actionable underneath these cards. So I'm just giving you the card itself, which tells you a brief synopsis of what is the situation. And then when you click into the card, then you get the actionable that is going to allow you to deal with that. So let's say, for instance, there is a debility here of being selfish with this path. So some of the actionables are doing selfless things, actually going out and engaging, and we get specific. Go and do this because it's going to wear down this selfish thing, which is going to in turn decrease the loneliness, which is actually going to remove your ability to be prone from separation. So that's how this really works, and it smooths in really well. Some of the qualities here, and again, we're on phase 2, the hero's body. There's a statement that says a hero deserves a hero's body. And what that means is that generally people that are on certain kind of paths will sometimes have this kind of body where it's like they should be athletes, right? And this path is like that, because this is the Hail Mary path. This is the path that you can accomplish almost impossible things. And this is the only path that in itself is very akin to the sun, which is number one. There is that aspect of this path that actually allows the person, and that's up here, to have the ability to completely develop their body, right? And if somebody is on this path and they find that their body is not very developed, then you know that now you're getting the indicator that if you go in the gym though and you start working out, you'll see that you'll actually probably start building muscle memory very fast. Your skin, your tissues, all of that will respond much more rapidly than maybe others on other paths. Okay. And this is showing you again why we all need each other, right? Because at the end of the day, you always get this idea of wanting to be everything. And I can tell you, all it's going to do is lead you to misery, because if you become everything, that means you don't need anybody. And then you'll be lonely and isolated. So you've gone nowhere. You got to understand how to function with tribe. Even if you went to the height of everything that you were doing, you would only just have a bunch of stuff to do. And I'm speaking from experience here. So you would learn then that, okay, these are the things that actually benefit and increase me, but also maybe somebody on another path. And that's how the cosmos is all still one piece, even if we're divided. Because you may have the physical strength, and another path may not have the physical strength, but they may not be dealing with the loneliness and dealing with the selfishness, because that's not a part of them. So we have to see that as when we're all sharing and together, all debilities become benefits. You see what I mean? It becomes opportunities to let others shine in areas in which they shine the most. So we're going on here, and it says this is a tech god. Rahu, which is this path, again, this headless path, is involved in everything to do with the illusionary aspects of the reality. So this means that the place that you plan in your mind when you imagine things, virtual reality, technology, all of those different things are a part of this path. And you'll find that people that are on this path are very inclined to do these things. I'll give an example. Sean Combs is a number 4. So when you think about, and this may be a random, but I just want to show you how universal this kind of stuff is. When you think about even making of the band and different things that Mr. Sean Combs has done in his life, and understanding that he's on this path, you could see how certain things he's not doing really well at on this path. But you could see how other things became the windfall of why he's where he is. So remember, Making of the Band was about taking these underdogs or rappers that didn't have a career and taking them to another level. So that was like one of his claims to fame in doing that. Working with the underdogs, getting them to another level, and he benefited from it. So that's one. The other thing is Puffy is actually an engineer. That's the only reason why he was able to survive in the music industry and be with Biggie Smalls. He mixed down the tracks. So he's the guy that's sitting in there with all of the boards and all the computers and all that, mixing down the music. So he has this technical ability that is giving him the ability to actually go beyond what most of the people, especially in his time, were capable of doing with the music. So that's just an example. And you'll start finding these examples all over the place. You'll even start looking at your world leaders and noticing that many of the world leaders are either 2s or 3s. And that's for a specific reason. But again, we won't get into those fine details. Also in this path, there's a lot of virility. I could definitely attest to that, meaning that you always have energy, you always have creativity and a creative component, and even a higher sexual drive than that is what would be seen as normal. So it's good to actually be aware of that, because you're kind of knowing where your creativity is going and why you're able to accumulate so much of it. And then also people around you can kind of understand a little bit more about why you may be a bit high strung sometime, right? And then again, this is the Hail Mary, which I say is the lottery shot here. This means that this person has an uncanny ability to pull stuff off that is not supposed to really even happen according to everybody else. We come into some final advice of learning how to be appreciative, because this is an issue with this path. Completely headless, no limitations. And in that, you're always looking for more and more, the next big thing, the next gadget, the next major awakening. But in all of that, if you're just moving, you're basically nearing burnout. So you need to actually take a moment, sit back, and appreciate things. It gets rid of selfishness. It gets rid of a lot of other problems that would not allow you to actually complete this path and to be as enigmatic as you could be. Lastly, this path is a pleaser. Pleaser means that you basically say yes to everything, regardless of if you can actually do it or not. And so obviously that's something to watch out for. There's a phase 3 of this path, but you can get where this is all going. You can see that continues. And I'll finish this path just so it's on record. From what we have here, there's power numbers. And so we take these phases also in what would be important for you to know in phase 1. We can't give all this stuff to you in one time, because you wouldn't even be able to complete it. It would just be overwhelming. So we do the extra work at the curation of this. Probably should come at this stage rather than first, because it's totally not even going to be something they want to do. But once you finish phase 2, let's say, then it's easy to jump into phase 3, and you should know more about power numbers then. That way you don't over obsess, because by phase 2, you learn about how to take this knowledge in at your own pace, because some paths even could be more prone to just trying to take in all the knowledge. You want to know everything, and then get confused, and then get upset, and it all happens all in one day, and then they're done with it. And that's a part of their path. So we notate that on their path. But in this case, we also help with rolling out this in phases. And so we feel like, let's say in phase 3, you should now know about your power numbers, because if you're trying to do that in number 1, you're trying to look at things, you're paranoid, you're wondering if that person is bad for you, and because you have no real understanding of the system yet. But as you move through it, you start realizing that strengths are weaknesses, and weaknesses are strengths, and challenges are but ways in which you can excel even greater than what you were doing before. And so all of that starts to make more sense. And so now you're ready to look into power numbers. And this is literally people that you can connect with, or probably people that are already around you, but you could probably engage with them more to get greater results, because they harmonize well with your number. And that's what we talk about in the course in the Mindful app, is that the system is set up and dialed in that way. So you're able to actually see a person's path number and actually say, well, shoot, I need a number 8, and we're already vibing and we're cool. And then, you already have another indicator that we would probably be able to work really well together. So it helps a lot. And so last but not least in this, we have some debilities, which is memory loss. We have some challenging numbers, people on the path that literally bring more challenges. And generally in phase 3, you're looking forward to those challenges, and you realize how enigmatic that could be for your own transcendence into another stage of yourself. And again, under these are exercises of how to prevent this kind of misery. This memory loss actually happens because of the overwhelming amount of nervousness. So as we talked about in this path, the Hessonite and the silver supplications help with the nerves. And then that actually assists in later on in life that you don't lose your memory. Because when you start screwing up your nerves, you stop remembering things as much. And that's where that comes from in this path. Also, this is a secret science path. This path, being equivalent to that node of the moon, actually has access to the ancestral energies and the secrets of the ancestors naturally. And that's what the dark side of the moon, if you may, is corresponding to, is that ancestral secret science energy. And that's probably why I'm able to do the things that I'm able to do, as far as understanding exactly what's happened thousands of years ago in language, and being able to speak even on behalf of the ancestors. At times when I be on shows, it's almost like I just get in this flow, and then it just starts communicating, and everything is just rolling about what we need to know about what happened and what needs to go on now. That's that ancestral connection, and this path is dialed into that. There's another aspect in phase 3 needs to understand about consumerism. Again, that's that whole limitless, I can't satiate, so the tendency to keep buying things. So it's learning that, hey, don't spend all your money, and on all these different things that you want, because you're going to be more prone to doing that than others. And also that's going to come back to bite you later on in life, especially if you're lonely, especially if you've lost your memory. So there's two aspects of how these paths and this information encourages you. It keeps the fire behind you, like, I don't want to become lonely and later on in life and broke. So that's the fire. And then there's also the water and the comfort of, I'm connecting, I'm learning more about myself, I'm getting content with my experience and who I am and living inside of myself. And of course, this allows you to be and to know and to confirm who you are and to not deviate into things that are not a part of your makeup, and allowing others to get you to do that for their own judgmental reasons. Okay. Lastly, there's some career moves here, because our ultimate goal, and that's the last one, so I'll switch screens. Our ultimate goal is to, since secret energy, let's say in this case, is profile centric, we have a process that a person would first know about themselves, then they would learn about their uniqueness through their path. And then in learning about their uniqueness, we also have suggestions for careers. It literally gives that information also, what you would be good at doing. And you will, when you hear that, you'll hear, oh man, that is something I like to do, but that's not something I'm working in right now. And what ambassador training is designed to do, and is basically teach you and to train you how to create a unique asset around your uniqueness, and then take that unique asset and then place it on your profile, which is all part of our integration. It's like a Etsy style integration. So now you place this asset on your profile, and then now anybody that comes across it and says, I want to take this meditation course from Mark, and they see Mark, they've been suggested to follow Mark's page because Mark loves meditations, and you may have selected meditations when you signed up to the profile. So you may get a suggestion, hey, save Mark as your tribe member. So you may save him as your tribe member, and then you start seeing in his feed him doing the meditations. You're like, man, this dude is on point. He's doing all sorts of stuff. He's over here. Then you click into his profile, and then you would see on his profile page his unique asset, as long as he's gone through the process of developing that unique asset. And so then when you take that course, of course, he would get paid for that course. And so it's allowing for that purchase of his course. And so that allows him to be able to sustain himself from his uniqueness. This is really dynamic, because when you think about the potential of this, especially since there's also an affiliation there, meaning that if you take the course and you say, man, this course was dope, I don't really do meditations, but I can recommend this, and you start recommending his course to other people, you're going to get the proceeds or the commissions from the selling of that course. So this means that everybody inside the platform, based on what they're doing, is only driving everybody inside the platform to a greater level of success and sovereignty, whether that's mentally, spiritually, financially, it's all there. And I can't say how divine something like that is, because it's a lot of moving parts to figure out how they all connect, but not add anything that actually makes this a deal breaker or makes it overwhelming or makes it impossible technically to actually accomplish. So this is what we feel like is a great stage that we've reached now, because we are pretty much complete with this beyond the actual installation of some of the end user stuff that is needed for you to be able to engage in the system. There's also things that I didn't talk about here today, just to leave as sneak peeks, especially for beta users, on stuff that we put in to make navigating the information in the site a lot more easier. It's a big question would be, and I did answer it earlier, but just in breezingly, like some people may say, so when is this supposed to happen? We're planning on launching beta in the second week of September, meaning we want to go live with that site that you were seeing, powered by Mindful app, in the second week of September. And we want to onboard masses in 2020. We want to make our 2020 Sovereign 2020 Advent of a whole year of people just coming in, joining in, learning more about themselves, hooking up with tribe in the meditations. Meditations are getting bigger. People are leaving social media. First, by sharing things, because that's the other thing. Like, we're sharing right into other social media. You share to Facebook, you share to Instagram. And then when somebody sees that, they say, well, shoot. And once they get in here, they're like, well, shoot, I'm going to set up me a profile. I'm going to be in here. And like I said, if you have people joining every single day, it's only going to be a matter of time before everybody is in, or a large amount of people are in. And we feel like at the end of the day, The only reason why everybody is not already doing something like this is because it hasn't been built yet. Not that there's a bunch of them and everybody is just completely out of their minds and they want to do fake matrix stuff. It's not that. It's that we need our creative people to actually be empowered and in balance to actually go forward with their creation. And the most important thing is that you know about yourself, because we have such a open heart to helping and assisting others, but still in that process of learning self so that you could be the best to those that you plan on assisting. So yeah, that brings me to the end of today's presentation. I'm going to go ahead and answer the questions that have been sent to me in relation to what I've talked about today. And as you can see, there's some stuff happening, to say the least. And it's given us all, just another win in all of this to keep going. So the first question here is that, oh wow, okay. So I do have, I heard that sometimes it glitches. It was glitching when other people tried to come in, and I'm going to get this up as soon as possible. But I do have a recording here that will be perfect. So that question first of those who didn't get a chance to get in, unfortunately, because of the technical trash that YouTube's got going on over there. They will be able to see this archive, and it'll be perfect. And I'll even get it up today, just to be mindful about that. So the first question is, so you don't have to be friends, so to speak, in order to be synced up with others in the tribe near one's geolocation and get their unmet tribe members' messages post in one's activity feed. And so how this actually works is that when you to get the suggestions happen automatically, meaning we suggest, and you can also search through members. We suggest people that are in your area or in your interest range of people you should actually like. Excuse me, I'm getting to that part of the conversation. It's just like a lot of conversation, a lot of dialing in. So anyway, what the system does is it suggests that to you automatically, kind of like MySpace used to say, hey, here's Tom. Tom's your first friend. So this suggests to you friends based on your interests. You cannot, and just to clarify here, you actually can't send messages to someone that has not accepted you as their friend. You can follow them, but you can't send messages. And we calibrated things like that from experiences that we've had sometimes with spammers and scammers, because once they're capable of messaging everybody, they within an hour can message the entire platform. I'm sick, I'm hurt, please send a check. And you have people that, because they feel like inside of our platform that we've curated everything and that they're safe, they think this is a real member, and they'll actually give something to that person to only find out later that it was a scam. So we kind of scam proof the site in order to get a very, very congruent connection going on. So that's a part of how that works. But yeah, you can actually follow the person and then you can see everything in their feed. And there's a difference between following a person versus saving them as a tribe member. So I hope that clarifies that. The next question here is, will the links that we have personally set up still be active towards the new site? Yes, it will. In fact, because we're basically in a subdomain of our site, now we're building in a certain site, but once we go live, it'll actually be still secretenergy.com, and even the subdomains such as University. Actually, University.com is not being used, but even all the subdomains like fun.secretenergy, store.secretenergy, all of those will still be tracked across the board. So there's nothing that needs to be changed. There's no links that need to be changed, etc. Everything will work as it is now. There's a question here also, is the life path number similar to the etiology, or do we use another method to figure out what etiology path? Just to blanket this, what we've done is instead of just releasing information saying, hey, go do it to yourself. That's actually why we're designing all of this, because this information is out there in tons of different books and different parts, and it's not organized. While what we're doing is we're putting a system together that is actually organizing all the information. So in this case, all I can say is that once it's available, you would already have the information made available to you by just filling out your profile. And so that's how this information is accrued now Because as we were saying that in the past, we said enealogy, life paths, and some people were looking just into life path information. We've taken all the information, life paths, Droidish numerology, personal experiences, astronomy. We've taken all that information, and now we're just saying enealogy path 4, enealogy path 1, based on the designations that we're giving for those numbers and the energies of those numbers. The next question here is the soul coaching going to be taking place with the Mindful app itself? Soul coaching is already in its beta stage, and it's basically universal, like across everything that is something that we're operating. Soul coaching is integrated, because what we're bringing emphasis on with all of the stuff that we have, which is really, we're narrowing everything down to just be the Secret Energy site powered by Mindful app, is we're basically bringing in the soul coaches who are already they're already ambassadors now, already working now. There's already, I believe, 12 soul coaches that have been with us through this process of going through the training. And even right now, we're about to do beta of enealogy on ambassadors. And that's how we're doing our beta testing, is we're actually working in this group that we already have. And we're running this information, and we're accumulating this information, and we're creating soul coaches and all that now, because we wouldn't be able to do that when we turn the lights on, because it would just start from zero. We know that we're basically, the moment we go into this site, we're already bringing people over from the old site. All your friends that you had in the old site, immediately when they start posting to their activity feed, you're going to see that in your activity feed. So this is going to be a thing where it's immediately going to scale up, and we're preparing for that scale up process. And one of the ways that we're preparing is, of course, in the first week of September, we're allowing the beta users and some of our site users to actually come in to begin to basically stretch out the stockings of the system, and for us to also debug any other smaller things or workflows that we still need to fix properly. So that's how that's working. So I think the second question is the same as the other about genealogy. This other question is, do you feel like Mindful app could at some point have its own publishing house, like a section for self-published books by tribe, a whole new meaning to self-published? And so absolutely. So that is all rolled into the unique asset, because if we're saying self-publishing, what we're saying is that a person has now felt that their uniqueness is to write this work. And our unique assets, we're always placing emphasis on a digital asset right now. And this is just personally in observing the economy and observing computers and quantum solutions, etc. Basically says that for you to get to a level of sovereignty, financial stability as fast as possible, it would be probably more beneficial if you could do that on the internet in some way, because then you could expose a countless amount of people to what you're doing, versus if it's just an actual live course that you need to teach physically, then you're only going to be able to expose people that are in your area. And also the payment gateways and all that is not going to be something that we can actually host. So we're placing emphasis on a person creating something that can actually be provided digitally. So in this case, if the person wrote a book, we would simply have their digital asset as their book. And then when someone went to their page, they would say, oh, wow, he wrote a book too. And then they would buy the book, and that would go right through the system, and everything would be done then. So that's how that works. We really also didn't want to go completely like the Etsy approach, which is basically allowing everybody to post whatever they want. Like, we contemplated that even for years. And I just kept finding so many faults with it. And it's mainly because, one, especially with larger transactions, let's say it's a piece of art. I say it's worth $5,000. Somebody buys it. It arrives. It's got a hole in it. Generally, the financial gateway, how you purchased it, just like eBay, it has to go through eBay. So now eBay is responsible for making sure you get your $5,000 back. Just like PayPal is responsible for, if something happens in the transaction, you can complain to PayPal. Hey, I didn't get the item as described. And all of that is it's like having a whole nother operation going on. And we just don't want to be involved in mediating someone not getting what they wanted to receive. Versus with a digital asset, the worst case scenario that happens is a person gets refunded back money of something that the person can produce infinitely because it's a part of their uniqueness. And that's the worst case scenario, versus that the person has now lost their money, they've lost the art piece, and they owe money, and we got to figure out. So that's just too much, and that's not sustainable. So that's kind of how this works with soul coaching and digital assets. Is there's a slight curation there, because we're being responsible for those that are actually releasing these assets onto the platform. The next question here is to clarify. Ambassadors will have access to beta testing. Absolutely. Ambassadors as you know, inside ambassador training, we always have this thing that ambassadors see it first, and we've always held true to that even to this day. And so beta users and ambassadors have access um, to beta testing. The final question that I have here is, I don't share freely in Facebook. Is there a way from preventing the watchers from collecting my data? Okay. And what we're doing on our side is all of our servers are private servers. So when you share something on Secret Energy, it is inside of Secret Energy servers. That's where it's actually being stored. It's not obviously being stored on your side because that's impossible. So from that aspect alone, then we have that information and we're mindful about that information. And this information is obviously what you're sharing in your stream. Also, what you're sharing in your stream can be seen by those that are looking at your stream. There's some fine details that we're still adjusting with that. Like if you notice on Facebook, you don't see everything that a person has posted in their stream until you're their friend. And then when you're their friend, you see more of what's in their stream, but you see some stuff. Versus Instagram takes the approach of making the page completely private. So that's what our beta testing is about, is kind of tweaking what works for us as a conscious community to be a better approach and a more mindful approach at how we're handling that. But as far as data is concerned, you won't find where there's no interloping, meaning that Facebook can't expunge all of the data from our site and then take it over to their site and all that kind of stuff. But what they would want to do with it, and whether you're already doing something on your browser right now that's already allowing them to do that, I wouldn't know. But there are stuff that they already have. In fact, there's quite a few different things that Google has inside of Chrome, or Firefox has inside of Firefox. There's just so much going on back there. So the only thing I can recommend for you is that don't put anything on the internet that you don't want anyone to see. And now I just say that straight to you. Don't put anything on the internet that you don't want anyone to see. Because if they want to see it, even a hacker, not even the government, but even a hacker, if they're diligent enough, they can get to it. And that's just how the internet functions. And it's something that you will know, once working with the technology for so long, you just see what everybody doesn't see. What you see is the design, the pictures, the buttons, and what's under there is the code is always moving across. But we do have heightened protocols to prevent sniffing and all the stuff that could go on illegally with accessing your data. The next question here is, also one of the things that I want to bring up, because it brought something else to my mind, is that there are things that we promised inside of the funding of Mindful app that will begin to be engaged next month and probably even this month. So there's certain things like we create a wall for the people that have contributed. That was one of the rewards. We're going to do an honoring for those who contributed above a certain amount, and we're going to go to the waterfall, do an honoring for that. So those things, I just wanted to mention that now. Those things are starting to come underway, so that's going to be something that's going to be handled. Also, our funding actually ends in 3 days on the Mindful or Fund.Secret Energy site. Of course, we didn't hit our goal, and we're actually at, I think, 15% of our goal. And so we're going to keep it running. And if people still want to contribute, they're going to contribute. But as it is for us, it's officially that we're rolling into this. And the more people that can help us, great. So we want to keep that open. But as far as that, okay, is this going to happen? I think we confirmed already that we're gone forward with this and it's going to happen. But at the end of the day, the resources that we asked for initially to do this are still in demand, meaning that I actually have to pay the developers. I actually have to figure out how to make this work. So any assistance is always needed. So going on with this, the last question here, or may not be the last question. One question here is, will the Mindful app itself host the content, videos, live streams, photos, stories, blogs, more, etc., which we will create through the unfoldment process of our uniqueness, or serve more as the grand connecting system where we would more so provide links to our personal websites, content to those whom are in resonance, and along with our past, which we would then guide to a personal platform to provide our services created by our own sovereign space. Okay. Now, the answer to the correct answer to this question is, remember that this is an activity feed. So if you drop a link to your site, there is nothing for us over here to be like, well, you can't drop links to your site. Versus in ambassador training, we don't promote that because it just creates people that are actually coming in to try to get ambassadors to come over and do what they do. Like we collected all these people just for them, right? Which we find actually to be a little bit more on the predatory side. So how this is designed is just like your feed inside of Facebook. You can post whatever links that you want and whatever images you want, as long as they meet the guidelines. And of course, the guidelines only state that, nudity and profanity and things that would just get us all in trouble. You can't really be doing any of that. But as far as what you wish to share with your own information, you can do that. But when it comes to what we endorse, meaning what we say is this is a unique asset, then a person has to go through the process of ambassador training and get to the completion of their soul coaching before they can have that built directly into their page. And that would allow us to basically see what is it that we're saying that we represent and that we're along in line with. And the most important thing also for everyone to realize is unlike let's say CNN or Facebook or Instagram or any of these platforms that have to also be very democratic in attends to that, they have these guidelines of what society is giving them. We don't have those guidelines. So this literally means that, and we have the system running now in Secret Energy. Everything is running this same way now. So I don't want everybody to think that they're coming into something that's totally different than the way that it's run. But we will remove people if they actually are coming in and disrupting what's happening versus like trying to give this huge leeway that just makes us democratically correct by society. So what I'm saying is something is coming into the platform that is counterproductive for the growth or predatory against the members and the tribe of this platform. It's a zero tolerance policy for something like that. And we're not playing around with that because we're also hitting 2020 now. And who knows, the internet might not even be here in the next 2 to 3 years. So we're looking at this as a springboard to getting us all into physical sovereignty, actual communities on the ground, template set, meaning this genealogy and all that run through the community, actionable processes of, let's say, for instance, we need to build, a greenhouse. You're going to be able to configure the perfect numbers of the people who are able to accomplish that to its height right there from the group in which has been being cultivated by the platform. So that's how this is really. When we say try, we're not joking. This is way more integrated than something like Facebook, where you don't even really know the person that you just sent the friends request to. You'll have less of that actually going on in the site. So that looks like the last question for this. And it's great. I think we started at 9, 10, 11, 12. So that went into the 3-hour mark, but I didn't feel that a bit. It's been a great time to actually share the bigger picture of this. I think I've jumped in quite a few times on attempting to explain secret energy and genealogy to people. And it's almost like just getting your hands around it is one thing, and then being able to actually explain it to everyone is another. But I know completely what I'm doing. And I know that this is something that is in need. And so there's a desire for this to happen. Also, there's many of us that are working in this co-creation. I wanted to thank everyone that has been involved and engaged in this, like spending their time, away from whatever it is else that they could be doing, and actually working in the co-creation to build this dream. So that way we can all come together and roll into happiness, because that's also a big part of this. Because a lot of this information now, and especially from being in here a decade, it's almost like you can't take in conspiracies forever. You can't, just be isolated forever. Like none of that works. So we create the solution, and the true term, if you build it, they will come, rolls into exactly what is the strength here, because nobody has built it yet. So we know why there's still some tension out there. But then when we build this, seeing the alternative there is going to be a nice breakthrough for all of us, because we're going to get a chance to kind of see who's just staying into all of that fake matrix. What do they call it? Exploitation? Who's staying into the exploitation that's supposed to be on the level as going where we're going next, or who's into consistently building and co-creating and using their power to allow us all to get to another stage. Right. So this is what I feel like this does. It does so many different things. So it's a universal tool. And what I did also is I built it with a mindset of being modular for all of those serial entrepreneurs out there and those that are creating things. If you're designing something for yourself, I can't say this enough. Like if you just got your own little course over there and then you're thinking, yeah, come to my course. I'm going to get more people from my course. you're going to be phased out. It's just going to happen. You're going to find in the future that more people are going to want to do things that benefit everybody rather than just one person. So you need to get started now. Also, serial entrepreneurs should know you cannot stay as the brand. No real company, no big company ever does that. Meaning just you, it's your courses, the 7, it's his video, it's his web. That's not sustainable. It's not going to work. So you got to wake up out of these illusions at times early as possible, since you still have your vigor, and start creating things that are modular where everyone can be involved. Because if you didn't notice, the one thing that the WhatsApps, the Instagrams, the Etsy's, the Facebooks, the eBays, what all of them are doing is they're just featuring everybody's content. They built the technology, but they don't supply the content. So that's also now their limitation, because there's certain things they can't do. There's certain things they can't do that we can do, while we can also do everything that they can do. And that's what makes this platform more superior. I would design something, as I feel like in the end of all of this, it's going to come down to corporations, as if they are the titans themselves. And the large corporations are going to be responsible for taking care of all those that are inside of that teepee, inside of that tribe, or inside of that corpus or body of that institution. And so instead of playing around over here in my mind about what I want to do and what I don't want to do, I just need to build something that I feel intuitively is along the same pathway of the original wheel in which we were created in. So that way it'll stand the test of time and not get into complaining and thinking somebody else is going to do it, or thinking I'm wrong for doing it, or any of the monkey mind stuff that could go on. Just staying clear, staying pure with the idea, and letting the creativity flow, and being willing to take it anywhere to dig as deep as we can. That's another thing. This is a solution for the unbanked also, meaning people that are even in, because once you get this done, you just translate it into another language. It becomes the Hindu version. It becomes a Chinese version. There's a Chinese version of Mindful app. And it's the same actionables. There's also, even before that, a kid's version coming, just as a glimpse into the future. Imagine the children, as I mentioned earlier, knowing everything about their path before they start their process in the matrix too deep, right? And then the parents understanding what kind of child they're sitting with. This stuff is so instrumental to everything, and it is not there. And it's somewhat alarming and amazing within itself that we've been able to function this long. I guess if you can call what we're doing now functional, because some people would say it's somewhat dysfunctional, but that we've actually been functioning this long without it. But to continuously go on without it and act like we're going to reach some great stage in the conscious community, I don't see that. I see us all getting internal, but because we're all internal, we're all in the same space. So everyone meets each other inside. And then all that fake stuff, like the curation, and we talked about this yesterday. I don't post pictures on Instagram that I haven't looked at a few times and through the rest of the pictures. So there's this natural curation that goes on where it's like you're just going to post what you feel like is what people want to listen to and hear. And then there becomes almost no limits for that when you start viewing others' profiles, and then you start shaving it down more. Everything here inside this platform is about keeping it real. So instead of you going more and more into not being yourself, you're actually going more and more into being yourself and being real. So you're eliminating that 25%, 30% fakeness that has to come about because you're dealing with someone that is not able to comprehend who you are. Now everybody knows who everybody is, and it's out on the table. And nobody's actually looking at one person that is that they're the better one and this is the worst one, but actually as something to complement and give strength to the whole. And also someone to seek after, because at the end of the day, when we're creating something and building things, and there will be way more projects around this, if you can imagine that, this is just giving us the ability to do things that we haven't even conceived yet. So you're not going to have all of the idea and every single program that can be launched right in the beginning. But at the core of this, the core and the foundation is already set. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for all those that have spent their lifetimes. I think my mom's on the line today. She spent her life, cultivating this process. And, our sisters that have been here, holding as pillars, our sister Wijhabi Dees and Neva and our brother Curtis, like all the ambassadors that are on the line, they've been sitting in ambassador training, some of them for 2 years now. And, seeing these beautiful faces and us growing together. Also, I will say again, for those that are on the line, there's something now even in ambassador training that we've put together that are a series of, you can call them meditations, But what they are is a storyline that goes along with these paths to understand the flight of these energies and the accomplishments that they must achieve in this flight, which we call the path in our lives right now. And so it just dials you in directly into what you'll be most powerful at doing. So I'm going to unmute the line for a big wholeness and balance vibrations from everyone, as we always do around this time. And I trust that everyone will go into this day having just that much more excellence on their consciousness, wholeness. Five strong. We see we. TP.
I love it. Whole family, whole friends.